I wonder what your plans are for the future. Perhaps you've got a holiday booked soon, or maybe a holiday next year perhaps, or perhaps there's a family wedding coming up, or a special anniversary on the horizon. Next Sunday, my wife and I will be celebrating our Ruby wedding anniversary. Oh, wow. So we're looking forward to that. We're only not going very far actually. We'd like to have gone back to Mallorca, where we actually met, believe it or not, for just over 40 years ago, and 41 years ago or more. And no, we're just going back to Scarborough. I don't know what that's second leg. Just for a few days to Scarborough. We don't feel we can manage. We'd like to have gone back to Mallorca. But maybe you've got a special anniversary coming up. Maybe you're looking forward to retirement. I'm looking round. I don't know what age some of us are retired already. Maybe you're looking forward to retirement if you've got to that stage. Nothing wrong, of course, with having plans like that at all, is it? It's right and proper to have plans, to have a purpose and a goal, and also to make provision for the future, particularly when we get older. But it's true, isn't it, in this life, and I'm sure you've experienced it as well as me, certainly it's true in my experience, that nothing, of course, is certain. We have no real guarantee, of course, that our plans will be fulfilled. So when we think about it, there's a danger then, perhaps, that we might fall into two extremes. We can either be over anxious about the future because we don't know what the future holds, or we can be like ostriches with our heads in the sand and be overconfident about the future. The people to whom James was addressing in these 5 verses that we read in James chapter 4 had fallen into the second category. So James reprimands them because their attitude, their view of the future was completely wrong. Verse 13 and also in verse 16 says this: "Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to this or that city, spend a year there and carry on business and make money. You boast in your arrogant schemes. All such boasting is evil. All such self-confidence is wrong." Now, James was speaking primarily to businessmen, maybe some business women as well. They had got big plans. They were going to a certain city to set up a business. They anticipated that they would spend a year there and make a good profit. Now, of course, James doesn't condemn them for that. There's nothing wrong in setting up in business or indeed making a good return on our investment if dealings are legitimate and fair. But what James does criticize them for is their overconfidence, their arrogance, their pride. They boasted about the future and bragged about their presumed success. But how did they know they were going to be successful? When they got to the city, they might not have been able to find any premises, for instance, to set up their business. If they had, people might not have wanted to buy their goods. There were all sorts of reasons which might have hampered their business plans. So here in these verses that we read together, in James chapter 4, James highlights 3 important reasons why it's not only extremely foolish, but also very wrong to have the attitude of those businessmen. In short, to be overconfident about the future in this world. about our future in this world. The first reason we find in verse 14. Let me read verse 13 to you as well. Now listen, he says, you who say today or tomorrow, we will go to this city or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. You do not know, will not even know what will happen tomorrow. Although it's not wrong to make plans, we must always realize that those plans can so easily change, because things can crop up tomorrow. Indeed, might crop up this afternoon. You may have plans for this afternoon, but they may change. They may change because of circumstances. Andrea, my wife, had planned to come this morning. She didn't expect to wake up and have an upset tummy and not be able to come. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or even this afternoon. We do not know what is going to happen tomorrow, as the writer of the Proverbs puts it, because Proverbs talks a lot about the future. And it says this: do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. So James says to these businessmen, look, here you are boasting about spending a year in a certain city. Well, how can you do that when you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow? The second reason James gives for not being overconfident about the future in this world is perhaps even more challenging for us. It's there in verse 14. What is your life? You're a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. You people, you boast about carrying on your business for a year in the city. To put it bluntly, how do you know you're going to live that long? How do you know you're going to live that long? In a year's time, to put it very bluntly, you might be dead. You might be dead. This time next week, you might not be alive. Life is so short, so fragile, uncertain. It's a mist, he says, which is there 1 minute and then it's gone. We're going to Scarborough next week for a few days, noted for its fret. Scarborough fret, but it can go, it can be there, but then in a few minutes it's gone. And we have nice bright sunshine. Somebody has said the length of our lives are as uncertain as the morning fog. Now, of course, we've got a marvelous example, isn't it, in the scriptures about how life is so uncertain. You remember that man? In fact, Jesus told it's a parable. And he said this. He said, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest." He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool. This very night, your life will be demanded from. This man had made plans for his retirement. What a great time he was going to have. He was going to take life easy. He was going to eat, drink, and be merry. He had a good income. His barns were bursting at the seams. Almost certainly he had become extremely wealthy. His health was probably still good. The future looked rosy. But he'd obviously given no thought about his relationship with God. Or if he had, he thought perhaps he was good enough for heaven. He didn't have to worry. Perhaps he thought he was going to be able to stand before God and God was going to be pleased with him, just like the Pharisee in the temple. He felt that he probably didn't need forgiveness. sadly, in a few hours, he had died and would have to stand before God and give account of his life. You may have come across that in your own lives. I had a very sad illustration of that in my life. The penultimate job that I did, I was in the Home Office, and my penultimate job was, I think it had a rather posh name, Controller Office Services, or something of that order. I was responsible for the messenger service and various other services, photocopying service, and various other things in the Home Office. And that was my penultimate job. And I was taking over with a man who was to retire. A man called Eric, who was a lovely man. And of course I had the fortnight or so overlap to try and learn as much as I could about the job. And then of course it was the little party at the end, the farewell party. And Eric got up, I remember, and he said, I'm looking forward to retirement. He said, I'm going to decorate the house. I don't have time to do that. I'm going to buy a new car. I'm going to go on holiday. My wife and I are going to have a lovely time because I'm going to be retired. That will be lovely. That was on the Friday. The following Wednesday, his wife rang and said, Eric has died. Eric has died. What is our life? A mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes, a shadow, grass that's soon withers. But there's a third reason why it's foolish and very wrong to be overconfident about the future in this life. Now listen, James says, you say today or tomorrow we will go to this city or that city, spend a year there, carry on and make money. You ought to say, if it's the Lord's will. Or if you like to use the Living Bible word, if the Lord wants us to, we will live and do this or that. With any plans we make, we must remember that our lives in God's hands. God directs our future. It is he who determines what's going to happen. The writer of the Proverbs puts it like this. It says, many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. And I noticed your motto text for this year is, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Well, that's exactly what James is saying. God says, I know the plans that I have for you. You might make plans, but I might change those plans. These men and women to whom James was writing had left God out of their lives. They were boasting about their plans of setting up their business in a certain city without any thought that God may have different plans for them. Our lives in God's hands. And only he knows what the future holds. The key thing for us is to recognize that. We must never forget God or leave him out of the equation in our lives. And there's a particular danger of that, of course, when things seem to be going well. Everything seems to be going well and smooth and lovely. And sometimes we tend easily to forget God. We forget that we are utterly and completely dependent upon him. Now this was a problem, of course, with these businessmen to whom James was speaking. They had probably been successful in their business dealings in the past, so they had become overconfident about the future. God didn't play any part in their plans. They had forgotten that the future was in his hands. How did the writer of the Proverbs put it again? Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. Interesting, the Living Bible, it's only a paraphrase, of course, the Living Bible, but the Living Bible, paraphrase that word, is an expression that we sometimes use still in ordinary everyday life. This expression is this: man proposes, but God disposes. Man proposes, but God disposes. It was said of Napoleon Bonaparte, when he was considering invading Russia, a friend tried to dissuade him using those very words. Napoleon, man proposes, but God disposes. Remember, you're in God's hands. But Bonaparte's arrogant reply was this: I dispose as well as propose. A Christian at the time heard that, and he said, I set that down as the turning point of Bonaparte's fortunes. God, he said, will not suffer a creature with impunity, thus to usurp God's prerogative. And of course that forecast was absolutely true. The Russian campaign marked the beginning of Napoleon's downfall. I propose, he said, I dispose, I propose, I dispose. But no, he doesn't. God disposes. For us to go through life or to conduct any part of our lives without reference to God smacks of arrogance. And arrogance is something that the Bible everywhere condemns. And so James is saying exactly that here. We shouldn't be overconfident about the future, but instead we should say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. We don't hear it much in these days, but years ago, after the notices of proposed future events, or if we were talking, Christians were referring to things planned for the future, they used to have the two letters, D-V. Can you remember that? D-V. No, perhaps it's going back so far that most of you can't remember it even. But yeah, it's they used to add the letters D-V. D-V stands for two Latin words, Deo Volente, and Deo Volente means God willing. So in fact, when they gave out the notices, when they said that something was going to happen in the future, God willing. If God wills it, those things will happen. And so as we make plans for the future, whether it's to be in our own personal lives or indeed in the life of the church, let's always add those letters. D-V. Deo Volente. God willing. For we don't know what the future holds. We don't even know what will happen tomorrow. Our lives are so fragile and uncertain. Now, in the light of what James is saying here in these verses, perhaps I could just mention in closing three things very briefly. Three things first two to challenge us, and the third one to encourage us. First thing is this: if life is so short and uncertain, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, indeed if we don't know if there will be a tomorrow, then we should be absolutely sure that we're in a right relationship with the Lord. We should be absolutely sure that we're trusting the Lord Jesus and what he did upon the cross, and not trusting in our own goodness or thinking that we are good enough. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. Trusting nothing else. But we must absolutely be sure that we're doing that. It's no good just coming to church it's good to come to church, but if we don't know and understand the gospel and put our trust in Jesus, then we're not in a right relationship with the Lord. Secondly, we should be living our lives with some urgency, not leaving until tomorrow the good that we should be doing today. In fact, James puts it like this in the last verse that we read. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is a sin for them. I came across a poem. It's not exactly a Keats or a Tennyson. In fact, it's a bit rubbish really in some ways, but it explains exactly what James is saying. Let me read it to you on this thing where he says we shouldn't put off things till tomorrow if we can do them today, because we don't know how long we've got in this world. He was going to be all that a mortal could be. Tomorrow, no one would be kinder or braver than he. Tomorrow, a friend was troubled and weary in you, who'd be glad of some help, and he needed it too. On him he would call and see what he could do. Tomorrow, each morning he'd stack up the letters he'd write. Tomorrow, and think of the folk he would fill with delight. Tomorrow, it was too bad indeed he was busy today and hadn't a moment to stop on his way. More time he would have to give others, he'd say. Tomorrow, the greatest of mortals this man would have been. Tomorrow, the world would have known him, and he ever seen. Had he ever seen tomorrow? But the fact is he died, and he faded from view. And all that was left when his living was through was a mountain of things he intended to do tomorrow. Let's pray that indeed we don't leave things till tomorrow, important things that we can do today, because we don't know how long we're going to be here in this world. The third thing is this: to comfort us and encourage us. If God holds the future in his hands, then there's no need to be anxious. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. If our lives are in God's hands, if he holds the future, then we need not be anxious. As Christians, we can look forward to the future with confidence. God doesn't promise us an easy life, but what he does promise is that he will never leave us nor forsake us. He's not only has he loved us so much that he sent his son into this world to lay down his life for us, but also he's promised never to leave us, not for a moment. Whatever our circumstances, we know that God is always going to be there. Such a comfort, even in the difficult times of life. God is there with us to guide, to strengthen, to bless, and to ensure that all things work out for our good. And at the end of it all, to take us safely to heaven. That's what we've got to look forward to. As I said, God doesn't promise us an easy life. We may have to put up with lots of things in this world, but at the end of it all, we should be there with God in heaven. We're going to sing our last hymn now. Let